I want to play you a clip of a segment that aired on Russian state-controlled TV station NTV over the weekend. It was a segment about the completely false conspiracy theory that there are U.S.-funded biological weapons laboratories in Ukraine. Part of the Russian network's evidence for the existence of these weapons labs were clips from Fox News with U.S. elected officials like the Republican Senator Ron Johnson and the former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard claiming that the U.S. hasn't been telling the full truth about this issue. Here's another Russian TV segment from this weekend where a different Russian TV network just played a huge chunk of Tucker Carlson's Fox News show translated into Russian. I have to play a second for you with the sound on because the Russian translator tries to mimic Tucker's performance while speaking. It's quite funny.
Есть ли у Украины биологическое оружие? У Украины есть объекты для биологических исследований. Что?
Other than being very funny, it's also deeply concerning. You see the banner under there, Undersecretary of State, Ukraine has biolabs. Now, what Carlson is doing in this segment is taking a statement from Victoria Nuland, the U.S. Undersecretary of State, completely out of context. She's confirming that the U.S. does have biological laboratories in Ukraine like we have all over the world, labs that work like the CDC to monitor diseases and to prevent outbreaks. They're not weapons labs. But look at how far Carlson took that from its actual context. Here's the clip that I just played for you, originally in English.
Under oath in an open committee hearing, Victoria Nuland just confirmed that the Russian disinformation they've been telling us for days is a lie and a conspiracy theory and crazy and immoral to believe is in fact totally and completely true. Whoa.
Whoa. Indeed. What Carlson is saying there is not true. There are no biological weapons labs in Ukraine, let alone bioweapons labs funded by the U.S. But we now know, thanks to reporting out of Mother Jones, that Tucker Carlson's show falls so in line with the fake narrative the Kremlin is trying to push that the Kremlin actually sent out a memo to Russian media outlets instructing them to literally play more of it. Quote, it is essential to use as much as possible fragments of broadcasts of the popular Fox News host Tucker Carlson, end quote. Whoa. It's been deeply alarming watching Russians and Chinese-controlled state media go all in on this fake biolab story. It's a level of propaganda coordination that we've never seen before between those two nations, and it's all the more alarming now that U.S. officials are warning that all this talk about these Ukrainian bioweapons labs might be a pretext for Russia using chemical or biological weapons of their own in Ukraine. That's a huge concern, given all of the allegations of war crimes that have already been committed. We also have this new and honestly hard-to-believe concern at home in the United States, because U.S. conservative media has become, at best, a useful idiot for Russian propaganda. Tucker Carlson is the most visible piece of that, but he's just the tip of the iceberg. The larger piece of all of this conspiracy theory, it's coming from the underbelly of the internet, a place that most of us do our best not to spend time in. I hope you don't. I certainly don't. But luckily, we have NBC senior reporter Ben Collins, who is willing to spend a ton of time in the dark, weird corners of the internet for us. Joining us now, Ben Collins, NBC News senior reporter. He covers what he calls the dystopia beat. Ben, thank you for being with us tonight. This one is deeply alarming. You have covered a lot of garbage on the internet, but this one is alarming because you have described how these things sort of start on the underbelly of the internet. They work their way up to Fox News, and then they spread out, now being used by the Russians and the Chinese to justify some things that they are doing or might do in Ukraine.
Yeah, let's be very clear about this. This specific conspiracy theory started in the English-speaking American far right on a website called Gab. 8 days before the invasion, there was a user that posted the biolabs that they said were all over Ukraine that were being used in their eyes to build bioweapons. Now, these are research facilities. They are not, creating bioweapons there for the United States government, but it fit into that larger narrative that made sense in the far right, that Anthony Fauci is building bioweapons and releasing them all throughout the world to create the coronavirus, to lock the world down, all that stuff. It made a lot of sense. problem is the Russians hadn't really thought of this conspiracy theory before the invasion. Before the invasion, they didn't talk about it at all until the 24th, the day they invaded Ukraine. The American far right seized on this biolabs conspiracy theory. In fact, they weren't really taking to this denazification narrative. So they were turning on Vladimir Putin and the far right and the QAnon spaces as well. But this biolab conspiracy switched everything around. In the last week, they have turned back to being effectively pro-Vladimir Putin in the QAnon and pro-Trump spaces. And then Russian propaganda took that American propaganda that was created in these far-right spaces, in the QAnon forums and on Gab, and made it their own.
Let's talk about, it reminds us of the theories that COVID-19 was deliberately started in a lab and spread out. Does this start and live in those kinds of places?
Yeah, that account on Gab was an anti-vax account. That's the remaining legacy of the anti-vax spaces on the internet. They are conforming to be part of the broader global far right to push these conspiracy theories against the Bidens, against Anthony Fauci, and against what they would call like the medical establishment all throughout the world. The global far right has coalesced around that. And it's worked for Russia, too. In fact, the TASS, the Russian news agency, they didn't post anything about biological weapons attacks that were created in Ukraine in the run-up, in the 1 month before the invasion in Ukraine. But on Thursday and Friday, they posted 24 separate articles about what they called biological weapons in Ukraine. This has become their pretext for this war, and it stemmed from the American anti-vax communities and the American QAnon communities.
We've seen Fox News and their personalities get behind some very unusual things prior to this war, this trucker protest in Canada, something that was really egged on by far-right media, but including Fox News. At some point, when the Russian government starts telling Russian state media to quote and continue to use run clips from Tucker Carlson and Fox News, does Fox have some response to that? Are they out there saying, hey, whoa, hold on a second, this is not meant to be stuff that goes into Russian propaganda?
Not yet, not that we've heard. However, I will say that there's going to be a line at some point between the real reporters who are in Ukraine getting hurt. There was an injured reporter for Fox News in Ukraine today, and the people who are aligning with the crisis actor people who are saying, this invasion is justified, or that this invasion isn't really happening at all, which is a sort of choose your own adventure that's happening from Russian propaganda right now. So eventually, I'm pretty sure those reporters who are in these cities getting shelled and watching children die in the street will want to step up and tell their colleague over there at Fox News in his cabin in Maine that maybe this is realer than he wants to let on to his audience.
This would be a good night to do it, given that the State Department reporter for Fox News has been injured by shelling in Russia, in Ukraine, as you say. Ben, thanks very much for your reporting. Ben Collins, NBC News senior reporter. We appreciate your time, as always.